most doctors think that their income is tied to the level of skill that they have. But an economist would say something different. And I agree, because most of our income is determined by the structure of the system that we're in. So once you understand that structure, you understand the system, you understand where you stand. Now, I'm not an economist, but I do spend a lot of time analyzing the healthcare systems and how money flows through those systems. If you're new here, I'm Dr. Nix. Today is Wednesday. This is my whiteboard, and I'm going to be taking you through monopoly and monopsony, which are two terms that underpin the systems that a lot of doctors work under. And when you understand that, you'll be able to understand how your income is determined and whether or not you're actually making a choice about your career. So let's get into it. Where's my pen? Okay, great. So the first thing to say is that these terms, monopoly, monopsony, are relevant to medicine because we are in an economic system. Now, what you need to understand first is that in any system or any economic system, you have supply and demand, right? And that supply and demand are what control either your wages or the price of something, right? It's kind of the same thing, but one is for careers, one is for income. I'm just going to split it that way. Hope that makes sense. So when it comes to a monopoly, what happens with a monopoly, I don't know if you've played the board game. Most of you should have. But I don't know, do people still play Monopoly? If you still play Monopoly, let me know. If you've never heard of it, let me know too. But in a Monopoly, what you have is one person over here who is the supplier. And then you have multiple people over here who are the buyers. Okay, so these are the buyers. So they all buy from this supplier here. So supply is from one entity. Now, when you have a monopoly, what that means is that you basically are the dominant supplier, because in real life, there are like multiple suppliers, right? They're different people. If you want broadband, you can go to BT, you can go to EE. I don't know, depending on which country you're in. If you're in America, it's Verizon or T-Mobile and so on. But the point is that you normally have suppliers and you have buyers, supply and demand, right? But in a monopoly, and if you play the game, you have the secret, right? The point of the game in Monopoly is it's based on real estate, and the point is to own as many houses or land and property so that you have the power to charge everyone else rent, and so you essentially you have all the leverage, you have all the power. Now, if you have a system where these competition are knocked out, right? So, for example, in London, if I want a water supply, I only have one supplier, which is Thames Water. So they have the monopoly on water. I can't go to another company and ask them to provide me water. And so because of that, they have multiple buyers, one supplier, so they set the price. Hope you're keeping up. So that is what a monopoly is. And there are, most governments have a threshold to avoid this from happening. So that's why you have to have enough competition. You can't have different companies buying other companies, because then they would have the monopoly and it's unfair to the buyers, which are you and I. So that's the monopoly. So we're going to go over to monopsony now, and this is where it gets a bit interesting. So in a monopsony, what you have is over on this side now, you have many people on this side, and then on this side you have, guess who this is? This is your buyer. So we've switched. So the buyer is on this side and the supply is on this side. But what are they buying? Well, usually it's labor. So remember how I said that if you have a monopoly, you have supply control. And if you have supply control, that means you determine the price. Oh. You determine the price because you have supply control. Now, in a monopsony, there's a high supply of, let's say, labor, but there's only one buyer. So now it's the same equation, but it's just on different sides. So now what happens is, because the supply is high here, but demand is low, they set the wage. So the buyer sets the wage because the supply is high. Now, if you work in the UK, I would argue that the UK has a monopsony system because most doctors have to work in the NHS. I would say about 80 to 90% of training doctors work within the NHS. The NHS employs about, last time I checked, 1.4 million people, the largest employer in Europe. Okay, so who's setting the wage price? It's not these guys. It is this guy, the NHS, who is determining the wage. Right? So how do you balance this? How do you, I showed you with the monopoly, you just get more suppliers. Sorry, you get more providers. Yeah, you have more people supplying so that it's not just one person. And so the buyers have options. Okay, but in a monopsony like this, where the labor is determined by one buyer, the only real way that you can balance this system, which happens anyway, which I'm going to go into in a second, is that you need more buyers. You need more people on this side. So you need more people over here, more people willing to buy this labor. Okay, and so if you need more people willing to buy this labor, over here you have a few choices, which I'm going to take you into now. So I'm just gonna put this over here just so that we're all up to speed. So multiple supply and one buyer is your monopsony. So this is your monopsony over here. Just remember this. So now this monopsony or monopsony type thing, NHSC type thing, exists to support itself. Any system whenever you have a system and that system gives you outcomes, it's because that system rewards those outcomes. So if you have a system that produces really good quality healthcare, it's because that system is rewarding that behavior, that there's an incentive. All humans act with incentive. However, because humans act with incentive, systems are designed to protect themselves. And one way that this monopsony or the NHS or an organization who has all the power can do that is by instituting different policy. So here in the UK, for example, most doctors train within this system. If you train within the system, that means you can't leave the system. You can't come out of the system. Because if you come out, then you don't have a buyer for your labor because you've come out of the system. And so if you want to use your doctor skills outside of the system, you can't because it's limited. You need to have a CCT, or you go to another country and they have different criteria. Or let's say you wanted to go and work in a private hospital, you won't be able to until you have certain qualifications. Okay, so there's a training pipeline within the UK, which means you cannot work outside of the system. It's a bit rigid in that way. Now, I'm not going to go into the reasons why that is too much. I'm just here to say that it exists. So your options to come out of this monopsony are limited. But there is a way out. There's always a way out because it's a system, right? So when it comes to markets, obviously they hold the power because they set the system and they determine how that system works, and they determine what it decides to incentivize or reward. And if you want to leave that system, if you want to balance this up, like I said, the only way to do that is to increase the number of buyers. Okay? So we need more people over here who are willing to buy from the supply. How do you do that? Well, it's pretty simple, and if you've been paying attention, you'll probably already know the answer to that. The one really one instinctive way is to change your location. So relocation. So you'd see a lot of people who go to Australia, Canada, New Zealand, UAE. All they're doing is increasing the amount of buyers that are available for their supply by moving to a different geographical location. The other thing that you can do is to find other buyers. Like, so this person who's gone to Australia has found other buyers. You can find those buyers closer to home. So you can go into private practice. If you are qualified and allowed to independently practice, so that means you have your certificate of completion or you have your CSER, or you are working for a private hospital as a resident doctor, then you can do that. You can move to private practice and you have a different employer. So you've increased the number of buyers that you have. Okay. The third thing that you can do is a portfolio career. That's not how to spell portfolio. A portfolio career where you find buyers outside of the system, right? Let's just put them down here. You find buyers outside of the system. So now you're doing medical writing, or you're consulting for health tech, or you're doing clinical advisory for a pharma company. Point is, you have stepped out of this system to find your buyer. Now, why is this important for us to know as doctors? Well, the reason why I think that it's important is because we need to understand how the market is structured. Because if you understand how the market is structured, what you understand is that the market structure, okay, is what determines the pricing power at any point. If you understand that structure, then you understand where your leverage is and where it isn't. And you understand that not only is the market determined by supply and demand, it then allows you to evaluate what your value is within that market. And it also makes you think about, okay, are you actually making choices out of, independently, or are you making those choices based on the structure? Like, if you're going to Australia and New Zealand, is that a choice that you are actually making, or is that a choice that the system is making for you? Now, all these things of like going abroad and then or having a portfolio, they're all responses to the system, because systems work like this, right? There's like a ball here, and they swing. It can swing this way and it will swing that way. But when it swings, it will always try and come back down here, back to equilibrium. That is just the way that systems work. I probably will do a video on systems design and systems thinking. But this is important because you need to understand your value in the market. You need to understand, okay, when I'm striking, what is our bargaining power? The reason why strikes happen in the first place is because individually, you don't really have much power. And that's why doctors strike as a collective. So I said that you can geographically remove yourself. And I'm just going to use the UK, okay, versus the US in terms of different health systems and how those markets differ. Now, the reason why, so in the UK, it is arguably a monopsony. So the power is with the buyer. In America, the buyers still have power, but there's competition. There's competition amongst buyers. I don't know how to spell competition. Can't really spell. So there's competition amongst buyers. In America, work is optimized, or the system is optimized for outputs and for income. Whereas in the UK, it isn't not optimized for income. What it is like behind, in a roundabout way, but not for you as a direct clinician. And essentially, if I'm going to keep this really, really simple, because in America you have competition of the buyer, you have higher salaries. People in America, doctors in America get paid more than doctors in the UK because there's competition. And like I said, humans behave on incentive. Systems either incentivize or disincentivize. That's what taxes are. Taxes are for incentivizing or disincentivizing, but I don't want to go into that. And so this is just a simple breakdown about why doctors in America earn more than doctors in the UK. And this is why we need to understand this as doctors to understand our position. If you enjoy thinking or learning about medicine through systems, through strategy, or through economics, or just how money flows through healthcare, then I write about it in more detail in the Second Opinion newsletter, which you can sign up to below. It's called The Second Opinion. And I would recommend that you subscribe to this channel because I will be here on Wednesdays with my whiteboard. Quick question for you before I go. Do you think that the UK system is a monopsony, or is it just like a monopsony? And my second question, comment below if you want to. Do you think that your career choices are made as you as an individual or as a response to the system that you're in?